Alrighty, so we have another special guest today, Mr. Nate, founder of Lugwrench Heroes. Such a cool business, and excited to have him share about his journey today, and how he started this business and how he scaled this to a multi-million-dollar company and still continuing to grow to this day. And he's also kind of a neighbor here in where I live in Arizona, in Mesa. So excited to have the conversation. And Nate, thanks for hopping on, and looking forward to the conversation.
Dude, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, dude. Nice to meet a fellow Masonite, as our buddy Ron Wolf would say. But it's exciting to be here, and hope we can have a good conversation for your guests to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're gonna go into this episode, around, for those that are listening, scaling from 6 to 7 figures. What are some of the things that you need to be doing to get there, and then sustain and continue to scale from there. But before we get into that, Nate, would you mind just kind of sharing, the story, like how did Lugwrench Heroes, come about, and what the heck do you guys do? For those that are curious about what is Lugwrench Heroes, and then we'll dive into some of the questions.
Man, this story could go really long, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'll try to give you a quick version. But what is Lugwrench Heroes? I'm going to answer that question first and
Yep.
foremost. We're the tire store at your door. So instead of you going and sitting at a shop for 2 or 3 hours, wasting your day, we know how valuable your time is. We know we only have a finite amount of time, and so we want to deliver convenience to the customers that understand that and understand how valuable our time is. And so that's where a lot of our clientele comes from. The idea for this business, it was really a long time coming about. I had worked for another company for over 17 years as a W-2 employee. One day, somebody introduced me to a podcast. We probably all listened to it. Andy Frisella, the Real CEO, MF CEO Project podcast. And he had a guest on named Bradley, which I'm sure you know who that is. And he has the Dropping Bombs, the Real Bradley podcast. I listened to like every episode of that. And every week, he had a new business owner on there, right? Whether it was somebody in real estate, construction, windows, it didn't matter. He had all types of business owners on there. I just really started to get the entrepreneurial bug from it, just from listening to it and putting it into my mind every day, right? And I actually was very fortunate. The company that I worked for had given me a lot of opportunities. Like, they treated me as an equity partner there. Like, I was a bonus employee. I had the golden handcuffs, per se. I had a very great income, and they provided me with a lot of tools and resources that have made me the person that I am today, and I have nothing but great things to say about them. And so that is really what gave me a lot of the tools. And this was 2019-ish, right? 2018, 2019. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do as a business. From listening to that all the time, I was like, well, maybe I should get into real estate. Everyone that has money, they do real estate stuff. So I bought Cody Sperber's Clever Investor program. Oh, dude, I dropped racks on his program, and I'm like, I'm going to be a wholesaler. I'm going to flip houses. And so I bought the program, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know anything about real estate other than I own a house. And I was like, I'm picking this up. But the good thing that came from that course is it taught you a lot of bootstrap marketing ideas. It taught you how to run Google ads. It taught you how to run Facebook ads. And there was a lot of tactical knowledge that I could put towards whatever I decided to do. So COVID hit. We're talking spring of 20, and everyone's locked down, staying home. And I'm like, is mobile tires even a thing? Right? Is it even a thing? I found a franchise that was doing it because I was working at a tire shop. I already know tires. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I looked into this franchise, met with the owner, almost signed a franchise deal, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I don't need to pay somebody to tell me how to sell tires and deliver them. I know how to sell tires and install them. I'll figure out how to deliver them later. I went to work, dude. I got my wife on board. She's freaking, you got to think, dude, like, I don't know how at the time that she just didn't think I was crazy. I had a multiple six-figure job. We lived in a beautiful freaking home. I was doing way better than I would have ever freaking imagined. And I'm like, I want to start a business. And I couldn't start one in Utah because I had a non-compete in place with my old company. And I'm like, where am I going to start this business where I can do tires and be in compliance of my non-compete, non-solicitation? And I'm like, well, I got family in Arizona. Let's just move to Arizona. And my wife's like, okay. She was just on board. So I moved my wife out of our beautiful home in Utah. We move in with my parents in their double wide trailer in East Mesa with a newborn. I do not to this day know how she thought I was not crazy.
Yeah.
It took us about 6 months to get out of there. That was kind of the launch, fresh, didn't know nobody, had an
Yep.
idea, you know, thought it could be a viable, I really believed in the idea. I didn't know what it was going to grow into. At that time, I didn't have any plan but a van, and I was going to sell freaking tires. And, a year into it, dude, I almost shut it down. Like, because business, like anybody knows, it's a freaking struggle. Like, it was taking up all my time. My mom had gotten cancer. You know, my mom ended up passing away. The same time my mom's passing away, my wife wants a divorce. And like everything was coming to a head at the same time.
Yeah.
I had a huge decision to make. And so I was going to shelf Lugwrench. I was just going to shelf it. I was going to go back into the workforce. I was going to save my marriage, and I met somebody. They changed my mind not to sell it. And best decision I ever made. Since then I've acquired, my wife and I are still together. Our marriage is stronger than ever. I was able to work through that, grow the business, and acquire other businesses the last 3 years. And, we're still growing right now at a rapid pace. And, I attribute that from, her support of people around me. And then, just taking an idea and believing in it, but also not trying to do everything, right? And so that's, I think that's all came to a head. And again, I could have made this story a lot longer, and I made it pretty long anyways. But that's kind of the general of how we got to where we're at right this second.
Yeah. And one thing I would also, just the calling out from like you sharing on that, it's like that should be encouraging for someone listening right now and they're just in the suck. It's like they're suffering, they're just, grinding day in, day out. Like that's a lot of, the beginning stages of growing and scaling a business. It's like you're working 70 hours a week for, not a lot of money for a while, and you're getting it going up, and it's like a constant battle where you lay your head down at night and you're like, WTF, like what am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Like, is this even worth it? Right? Like that's the battle that, business owners have, entrepreneurs have, especially in those early years, and so it's like it takes time to develop and work through that. And so, I appreciate you, sharing that, because there are people, because of freaking annoying influencers online, that make it seem like, you make $1 million in, 17 seconds after you buy their course or something,
Dude,
and
just
so
open up an LLC, run a Google ad, get a bank account, charge
you're
for
rich.
credit card swipes, and you're done, dude. It's game over.
Yeah,
Game
you're rich now,
You're rich, dude.
So I appreciate you sharing that. And so fast forward now, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like that seems like a freaking nightmare of a time. But like what's the business look like today? Like, if you're okay sharing rev size and, but otherwise team size and vans you got out there on the road doing the tire replacement and, service and all that.
As I said before, I started with one van, no plan, just a
I
man
love
in a
that.
truck,
One man, no plan. One van,
Yeah,
no plan.
and I just knew that I was going to sell some tires. Let's fast forward. I've had 3 acquisitions in the last 3 years that has brought our fleet from 1 to 8. In the fleet of 8, 2 are fulfillment trucks that we run inventory to our clients. We started our first year in business. I was open 5 months. My first year, we did just over $200,000 of revenue in 5 months. The second year, I did just short of 700, like 800,000 in revenue, somewhere in that, just over $500,000. Third year, we broke $1 million. Last year, we broke 2.2 million. This year, we're on pace for 3 plus. And between this and our mobile detailing side, where we have 2 more vehicles, we're going to push 5 million in revenue this year. Between both businesses, just under 20 employees. And we've got an ops team in place. I've got a sales team in place, a retail division on the tire side, and a fleet division on the tire side that just focuses on business to business customers. And I can say all of our growth has been bootstrapped through our cash flow and my original investment and my continued reinvestment. So, I solely own Lugwrench Heroes. I'm happy to say that we have made a profit since year one. We've never lost money. We've always been able to reinvest. That's something a lot of business owners have gotten to say. But obviously, I've done that because I've been able to go without a paycheck, and not everyone can do that. So I totally understand where on some people's businesses, my roadmap might look a little bit different than others, because I have a very supportive wife, that has a decent or a great income on her own where she could support us while I reinvest everything back in the business. That's helped us speed up to where we are today, kind of, give us quicker growth without having to bring a lot of outside capital in.
That's amazing. I love that. And I think for those that are listening that are like, I don't have the capital to do this and scale and da da da. It's like listening to Nate's story. It's like, guys, like you can grow and scale your business. You don't need to take outside capital. You don't need to think you need to go get a loan from the bank. Like yeah, like sure, like if you want to get another car, it's like yeah, go get, you can get a loan, but like to actually grow, like sometimes people talk to me and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about getting a loan to like invest in more marketing, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's been the way that I've grown every business I've had, from startup phase to multiple millions in profitability, has all been from just bootstrapping it. And that's the way I think you build a healthy business. Like I think sometimes people look at these like Silicon Valley companies and it's like they don't make money for like 12 years. And it's just like, I don't understand that world. And maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand why
It's
that's
all in the
somehow.
exit, brother.
Yeah, it's like that's the whole thing for people. I'm like, I think you should, it's like building a good business is a business that's like able to generate profit from the beginning. And I think people get it wrong when they're like, I'm just gonna grow the business and like it be okay not making anything, and I'm gonna fix the profit issue later. It's like you got this thing profitable in that first year, right? And then you continued growing it, even though you chose to take the profits and reinvest. Like that's a different conversation than sometimes people that are like they're not making any profit and then they're just thinking just selling more is going to be the path to magically fixing the profit issue.
And I think I want to give some clarity too. When I say no outside capital, I mean like from investors and things like that. One thing I think a lot of business owners should do is monitor their credit on the personal side and business side, because we're very fortunate because I have a healthy credit score on the personal side, and we have a healthy credit score for the business now, where I don't have to do personal guarantees on the vehicles as we buy them, because our vehicles are $160,000. Like we're financing those, right? The capital expenditure is below the line of our direct operating costs. The way that falls on the balance sheet, which is good or bad depending on what you're trying to do with your business. But with that being said, because we have such strong financials, I've been able to take out loans to buy businesses, where it makes sense to have the cash flow help pay for those back. And then two, it's allowed us to buy vehicles when we've needed them. And then, with a couple of our acquisitions, we've owner financed them. And so, getting creative and finding the right deals that make sense has helped. But networking and meeting other business owners and like their take on how they do things is helping kind of self-educate and kind of, help us get lucky in a couple situations to where we are right now. We've also been lucky that, I've paid for a lot of coaching and consulting along the way the last few years too.
Why don't you hit on that? Like, why did you decide to invest in like coaches and consultants for, helping you and your business? Because there are a lot of people out there that have like a super negative stigma around like, oh, like investing in coaches or courses and all that stuff is just a scam, or they have like this negative mentality around it. Like why did you choose to invest in yourself?
Dude, again, I got to give credit to, I have met, they say you should never meet your idols. So I've met Bradley before. If it wasn't for him talking about coaching and getting mentorship and like speeding up the process, I probably never would have done it. I can tell you, I haven't like just gone to like the online gurus for coaching. My coaches are here local that I use. And so it's, in a way, I'm paying for help for scaling. Shameless plug to Jason from State 48 and the scale program. But not only have they helped me on the business side and the sales and marketing side, but everyone in his coaching program almost are all local people, and they're all business owners, and they all own vehicles. And so I also get access to business owners that know, like, and trust me, that we build relationships with. Not only am I able to help them with their businesses and give them referrals, but they send me a lot of businesses and I get a lot of referrals. I'm not just in his networking group, but between all the networking groups I'm in, almost $1 million of our revenue for Lugwrench is from referral networks that we've gotten from either going to like BNI, is a big one. Eno is another big one. Scale, with Jason, and then any sort of like cars and coffee stuff like that, has helped us get to where we're at. And so anyone that is looking for coaching, you just need to make sure they align with where you want to go. And like anything else, there's so many programs out there and a lot of them are teaching a lot of the same things, but you get out of it what you put into it. And so if you take the knowledge to heart and you take time for the hour meetings every week and you take time to fill up everyone else's cup before you fill yours and give first to other people, the universe rewards you and those groups reward you, right? We did some coaching with the Elliott group like 2 years ago. All their coaches still send us referrals. I just had one of their coaches reach out to us right before you and I, got into this, into this podcast today, where like they have somebody that needed help with some tires, and like we're taking care of them right now. It's just from relationships. So I think the biggest thing that's made me look past that stigma is just always look for the relationship first and put forward what they're saying and give more than you take, and you can get a lot from coaching.
I look at like, coaches and consultants and, masterminds and all of those types of things as like, if I'm going to go to Disneyland, I'm going to buy the fast pass. I'm not going to be the guy that like pays for like the general admission and like waits in line. Like I'm going to go on Splash Mountain 3 times in a row while that one person that paid for general admission goes on it one time while I did it 3 times already. And that's really what like the right coaches and consultants and events and masterminds can and relationships can do, is like it allows you to like buy back time because you're able to shortcut your learning curve to just do the right thing from the beginning versus like pain and suffering. It's like I say, you have the 2 M's you can learn from. You can learn from mentors or mistakes, and it's your choice. And we still have to learn from mistakes anyways, because that's just part of life. But if we can expedite that process, like that's always been a big thing for me that I'm always trying to do. And we linked up at that the blue collar millionaire dinner again, and like I'm always going to trying to join different masterminds, and I have 2 coaches that I pay monthly right now to help me in different areas. And I'm like, I just think it's just like helps you just go so much faster. And that's,
Yeah.
So I like your mindset on that too.
Well, and that's one of our core values here at Lugwrench Heroes is that we're students and we want to get 1% better every day. I live that. Like I'm always constantly reading a book. I'm always constantly listening to a podcast. I'm constantly taking in information from every type of business that I can learn from, not just, I'm not just scaled down to tires. Like I want to learn from every business owner, every mistake, every sort of marketing idea. I just love it.
What would you give advice to people that are listening that are trying to go from 6 figures to, 7 figures plus in their business? Obviously, you've done that now, multiple millions a year in revenue, but it seems like it's just a fact. It's like 93% of businesses never will make past $1 million a year in revenue. So what are some of the tips that you would recommend that are to people that are listening to get their business past that $1 million a year threshold?
First and foremost is like once you start getting that way, you need to start letting go of things. You can't do everything yourself. The year that we had our breakthrough year where we went from, just over $500,000 to $1 million in a year where we doubled in size again, it was because I started letting stuff go. Like I went from being the guy changing the tires to the guy that was answering the phone calls to selling the tires to putting them on. And like I was in a wheel of death running. I'm like, it's insanity. It's insane. We think that if we hire somebody that it's going to cost us all this money. But I think that one of the things that helped me out a lot to give me some peace of mind to start hiring some employees is one of my mentors had me write down on a piece of paper everything I was doing in a day. It was 2 pages long, front to back, a piece of wide ruled paper. I still have it somewhere. I can find it. We went through them one by one together, and he's like, "You're taking out the trash. Are you insane?" And he's like, "You're answering the phone. You're doing the work. Do you realize you could pay somebody $20 an hour to do these things? And when you sell a set of tires, you make $600 an hour?" And he's like, "Would you rather be doing $20 an hour tasks or $600 an hour tasks?" He's like, go hire someone, please. At that point, we weren't tracking anything. We didn't have any metrics. But the company I worked for, we tracked everything. We had metrics for everything. And I'm like, why don't I have a freaking sales goal? Why haven't I broke 100,000 in a month yet? Because I hadn't wrote it down. And so I sat down. At the time, I had a business partner. And I'm like, why don't we have sales goals? I'm like, why don't we have goals for the amount of jobs we need to do a day? Like, why do we not have a goal for how much money we should be spending? And so what gave me the peace of mind was starting to set goals and writing them down. We bought the cheapest whiteboard that we could find on Amazon. We put it up on the board, and I wrote $100,000 on the board that month. I wrote 100 grand. I was like, I want to do 100 grand this month. And he's like, Nate, that's going to be pretty tough. We only did $45,000 last month, and it's just three of us. I'm like, I want to do 100 grand. You know what we did the next month in sales?
What?
We did 100 grand.
Isn't it
with
so
like
funny?
with three freaking people. Three people, and we did 100,000 in sales. We worked our butts off.
Yeah. But it's that intention. Like you get intentional about what you're doing. You start running a business like a business, shocker to everyone listening. Like when you actually start like writing stuff down and like tracking your numbers and paying attention, like having a company scorecard and these things and leveling up your time. It reminds me the plant guy business that that I bought into a couple years ago. There were similarities with the founder there, Matthew, where and we joke about it now, but we do this activity inventory audit with like any businesses that we're working with, and kind of similar to what you're doing, and we associate like dollars per hour. And he was doing a lot of that, so he's like paying the bills, talking to the landlords on his three different buildings, and he's like setting up, he's like going and building stuff and like the production facility with the team, and then also doing sales, and also like he's just in everything. It's been funny like on the journey like with him, and where every time I go and visit him in Florida, my one of my goals is to remove one more thing from his plate. And I'll always be like, oh, well, I don't know if they can handle this. And then when I'm there, like the last thing was his videographer. He's like, I don't know if he could be the one on the paid ads calls to come up with like the content ideas for our ads. And I was like, let's find out. And I was like, Steve, like to bring Steve over. I'm like, Steve, you are now on the ads calls. And and so going forward, now that's been the new process. And he's like, this is crazy. I didn't think it was. I was like, dude, you just got to give people a chance sometimes.
And we, as business owners, are so worried about it being perfect that we're afraid to let go. So I think to come full circle answering your questions, it's been the ability to let stuff go, understanding that having a process is better than a perfect process. And, obviously we want to shoot for perfection, but perfection, done is better than perfect. And understanding that and using the situations that fall through, using that to build a new process or clean it up and use it as a learning experience. It's crazy what people do when you give them some autonomy to run with it. Now we're working on that with our operations manager now. Like we're taking stuff off his plate because he's starting to do too much. So we're like, it's cool to see it come full circle back and like where you're growing positions, because it's like, dude, like, because you're empathizing with your ops team, like, dude, that was me. I was like, we've hit another roadblock. Like, you have no idea. This might be what unlocks us to 10 million. You have no idea. Like, this is the next piece. And so always tweaking stuff and just believing in your people and willing to let them fail or succeed at any level, I think is important for any company to grow. And it's like those are the things that have served me well to get us to this point.
From what it sounds like with what you're doing, I mean, you're already tracking for 5 million. I mean, we've built two companies that, have done 8 figures. And the thing that I found was it was doing basically the same fundamentals before you get to past 10 million, but then it's just having the duplication of that leadership. It's like having like you leading the leader that then is becoming an effective leader of leading their leaders that then like lead their, it's like, so it's like that leadership layer was really like the biggest thing that I've found that really made the difference at that, making that jump. And then like the unit level economics of your business, it's like, okay, well, how much does one van need to make a month? And okay, well, are we just making sure each van makes that a month? And then it's like, okay, well, let's get the next van once we reach that next target, and it's just like following the unit level economics and building those layers of leadership, I feel like is than just doing more of what's already working.
Exactly. We have goals, and we really, there's not anyone that's really effectively scaled a mobile tire company. You don't see any, there's not like any big player in the United States that is like has a huge mobile company. So there's not really a blueprint to go off of. So we've really copied like the home service companies. Like what do they do? How do they handle their sales process? What does their routing process look like? What does their hiring process look like? How many jobs a day are they trying to get done? What's their average ticket? So like we're just trying to copy everything that they do because it's very translatable to our business. Copying the highest level home service companies, realizing we're a home service company that happens to have tires on board instead of a AC unit or a soft water heater. A soft water system. We've got tires in the back, but same principle. So everything scales the same. So just having them as a blueprint has helped a lot too.
Obviously, that's the where you guys have gotten to now today. What's next on the journey? What's the goal for Lugwrench Heroes?
Our goal right now is we are hyper focused on getting to 8 figures of revenue at hopefully over 20% EBITDA. So we're hyper focused on that. That's where we're aligned. We're trying to take as much market share in Phoenix as we can, laser focused on getting to that. And it's funny that you brought up unit level economics because, I just got done reading Adam Coffey's Empire Builder. And
Yeah, he's been coaching me for the last year.
Oh, okay. That is freaking awesome. And when I hear words like I quickly write down all this stuff and like I've already been like going to work on that, which we already kind of know that. We know what it costs to pull into a driveway. We know what our vans can produce. One of the things that's going to get us to that level is adding performance pay with our technicians. So we're working with a company that's helping us build what that looks like. Because it's going to be a game changer, especially as we scale up. Because we want our guys to do 6 to 8 jobs a day, and that's a tall order.
That's a full day.
It's a full day. Our most efficient van can do over $80,000 a month in revenue with one van, our best one. But our average right now is a little over 30. How do you bring everyone up to that level? And if we can even just get everyone to 50, which is like we're going to be 3/4 of the way to our goal. We did all the reverse math to get there. It's not crazy. It's freaking it's 6 salespeople. 6 to 10 salespeople to get there, depending on where they're hitting. 10 to 12 vans, depending on where we're hitting. 15 at the most. So we're not talking like crazy amount of numbers to get here. We're starting to break some of the systems that we have right now. So just fixing those processes. And then, obviously companies our size, which you and I were talking about the other day, it's hard to have a president, a real legitimate COO, but companies our size can afford fractional ones, and it's hard to have a CFO or a controller, but we can afford fractional ones. And so having a fractional CFO has been a game changer for us. Having a fractional COO has been a game changer for us. And it's just knowing those things and ironing out those processes and then applying the unit level economics rule to it. And it's like, this is very scalable and it works and we know how to make it work. And, we plan on adding 3 more vans by the end of this year. I'm working on a couple acquisitions too to help buy revenue as well to make it quicker, so we can stay at that, as he would call it, that over 30% high growth, year over year. Cause dude, we've been there, but I've done it by accident. Like, we've been up 50% last, 2 years in a row. And then last year we were up, we've been up 100%, 2 years in a row. And then last year we were up, up another almost 40%, so it's like.
It gets harder and harder every year. You get bigger.
Yeah. And it's like, so we're on a growth plane like this, which is like, it's pretty cool. I discount a lot of my personal efforts. A lot I'm hard on myself. But then when you sit back and look and you talk to other business owners, you're like, shit, it's pretty hard to pull that off. Even, when you're, even when you're in the infant stage, like you said, over 90% of business never even get over the million mark. So, it's been fun to not be, not to be happy, and be obsessed of getting better every day.
Yeah, I love that. And so for those that are listening, we're talking about a lot of the numbers here. So if you're sitting listening and you don't know any of the numbers in your business, that is probably a good place to start. Start understanding, some of those basic numbers. If you have that home service business, How much does your truck need to be making a month for you to be profitable? If you, it's like understanding your numbers, understanding what has to happen every month for you to hit your goals. Like Nate was saying, it's like just having your goal on the board, and then to his point where he's like, we need 6 or 10 sales guys, being able to reverse engineer. That's something that, with Perfect Clean, our thing is we want to grow to 4 million EBITDA and then, likely sell it to, PE. And, our plan is to grow and have half of that EBITDA be through just like the main corporate entity. And it's 62 cars. We'll have 62 cars on the road here in Phoenix. And that'll be, will be 10 million a year, 2 million, EBITDA. And, the rest is going to be, our goal is through acquisition to get that other 2 million in EBITDA. And so it's having the end in mind. It's like if you want to fix your fitness and you don't track any of your macros and you don't, actually go to the gym and work out, but you're just like hoping that your fitness gets better, it's not going to just get better. Like you need to know where you want to go. Start with where you are. If you aren't tracking anything, today's a great time to start. I have YouTube videos where you could watch how to build a basic scorecard for your business. It's just like starting where you are, understanding where you want to go. And if you want to get closer to that goal, it's, understanding what those numbers need to look like. And so I just love how on it you are with the numbers in your business. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is like, it's like they want to just work hard and have the badge of honor of like, I'm a hard worker, but not do the boring stuff, which is getting granular and planning and getting into the strategy of understanding the numbers and what things must be true to cause those numbers to create the result that we're looking for. So I just, I can nerd out on that type of conversation all day.
I know you and I can talk about that all night. It's crazy.
So as we wrap up here shortly, what any other recommendations that you'd have to those that are listening that are on that journey scaling past 1 million a year? You talked about the delegation, letting go. Done. A done thing is better than a perfect thing. I'm a big fan of minimum viable done. That's what I tell my team. I'm like minimum viable done, and then we iterate and make it better. That's what we always talk about. But anything else that you'd say was a big game changer that took you over that million a year part?
Always just doing the right thing, man. In every situation. Own up to your mistakes. Always try to get better. Don't sell out of your own wallet. Charge what your service is worth. Don't discount your services. Create raving fans, because like your reputation is everything. And if you can create raving fans, and that's one thing that we've been trying to replicate, because when I was in the field, I would get so many referrals. Like I'd get done, the customer be happy. I'm like, give me 5 of your friends that could use our service. Like, write me a good Google review. Like what can I do? And like all at the same time, like I've always charged a fair price. You will never find somebody be like, Nate sells cheap tires. Like you're not going to find anybody that says that about me, which I'm completely fine with. Charge what you're worth, give customers options on your services, follow up and thank them for their business, and just always be customer focused and employee focused. And your employees are going to take care of your customers, and your customers will be raving fans, and your business will have no choice but to go over $1 million. There's a lot of us that have businesses that we think we're going to hire people, and all of a sudden it's just going to get to $1 million of revenue. There's a certain time when you have to lace up your boots. If you're a bootstrap budget, if you're on a shoestring budget, that you have to lace the boots up. You need to be the number one salesperson in your company. You need to be the number one fulfillment person of your company, and you need to be the number one customer service person of your company, or it ain't going to grow. So there is a certain time when you're on a budget and you're growing a company that you have to work those 70, 80-hour weeks. If you're trying to work 10 or 20, or trying to work like your buddy that you met that's hanging out and doesn't seem like they work a lot, they're always on podcasts, they're always in meetings. If you're trying to be like that guy without putting the work in, you got a long road ahead of you. The quicker you can get yourself to $250,000, $500,000 of revenue, I'm a firm believer. Like I want $500,000 of revenue out of everybody that's in our business. Like I want 500 grand out of everybody that's here. If I'm only getting 250 or 350 a person, what do we need to do to get the sales up? And so if you're not personally doing 250, 350 in revenue, you really have to work tirelessly through that goal, no pun intended, so you can, start adding to your team and scaling your business. But that's what served me well.
I love that. And I think to your point there as well, is like doing what you have to do until you could do what you want to do. I think people can compare, and like they could look at where you're at in your business now, or sometimes people will look where, my businesses are, and they're like, oh, well, I want to do like what you do. And I'm like, I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years. 13 years. So like, it's like you can't, like, you compare, like, people want to compare their chapter 1 to chapter 10 for someone else, and it's
And
like,
it'll just kill your happiness and your drive. No reason.
absolutely. And so it's like understanding where you're at, and and that's okay. That's your gift right now, is the grind. And it's working and earning through that, and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to be intentional. You can't, just pretend that it's going to get better but not work on the strategy. You can't just hustle every day. It's like, yes, you have to hustle, but then you have to go home and like use your brain and stuff to like read books and learn how to like track your numbers, and actually how to hire people and manage people and lead people. Like, all of those skills are going to be needed if you want to build a great company that creates the freedom that you see in people's chapter 10. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I'm glad we pointed at that because it's like it definitely, they call it work because it's work, right? And I think that's what's so great about the world of entrepreneurship and even like reconnecting with you again. It's like all of us that are like true entrepreneurial spirits, we're all going to the same place. It's just what chapter you want, you know?
Oh,
And where you're at, where I'm at, we both started in the index. We started at the cover of the book before there was any chapters in it.
yeah.
You know,
Didn't even
there
realize
was
we were in
there
a
was
book.
yeah, there was no forward in that book yet, right? There was no chapters where we started, right? And so as you have gone in your journey and you start flipping pages and getting into chapters, and it's almost like one of those books, I don't even know what you call them, where at the end of the page you could choose which page to flip to. Entrepreneurship, you got to read every page, unfortunately. Like you have to embrace it and keep getting all the way to the end of the book. You're not going to start at the end and know what happened. Like you have to understand every aspect of it. So it's cool because you can relate to entrepreneurs no matter what page they're on. So that's cool.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, as you were talking about that? I'm like, one of the things that can be annoying for like business owners is like, if you don't learn the current chapter that you're in, you just have to keep repeating that same chapter, and
Oh
and
yeah, you
that's the most,
reread it, baby.
you have to reread it again and again, because it's just like, if it's not growing from where you are, there's something that you're stuck on in your current chapter that you have to fix.
Yep, I love it. There's always a new villain, always a new protagonist, dude, waiting for you. Every time, all you can do is smile, dude. Keep a good attitude. Work on your mindset. A lot of us are roadblocked by some limiting beliefs, but dude, every time that I believed in the universe and wrote a check, it's always came back.
So good. Yeah, that's the every time that I have we'll call it a bad day, I'm like, today was a character building day. It was a character building day, but tomorrow has another opportunity to be a great day. But otherwise it's a
Yes.
character building day.
I like that. It's a good way to look at it. It's good. I love it, dude.
Yes.
You
Well,
know.
Nate, any final thoughts that you want to share with anyone, or obviously, the listeners are kind of all over the U.S., but for those that how they could find out more about Lugwrench Heroes.
You can always find us. Again, thank you everyone that took the time to listen to this. Cody, good talking with you as always. We're close. We need to talk more. We could even do it in person. We're so close. You can find our company at lugwrenchheroes.com. You can find me on Instagram at Nate the Tire Guy, or Lugwrench Heroes on all platforms. Lugwrench Heroes on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. Happy to connect to anybody in any business, no matter where they're at. Always love meeting new people.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Nate, thank you so much for being on here, and we'll make sure that we get all of that dropped in the show notes as well. And for everybody listening, thanks for being here. Take some things that you learned today, and don't just be excited about the podcast episode, but take some things and actually go and implement it, because that is where the rubber meets the road. No pun intended on the tire reference there, but that's how we make things happen. So with that being said, we'll see everybody in the next episode. Peace.